The Tylar Dominion research vessel drifted silently through the void, its scanners humming as they locked onto an object floating in deep space. The massive metallic structure, dark and lifeless, hung motionless against the backdrop of the distant stars. It was a human warship. Captain Virex leaned forward in his chair, his elongated fingers tightening around the control panel. This was a rare opportunity. The Terran military was infamous for its secrecy, and their warships were considered some of the deadliest machines in the galaxy. Finding one, apparently abandoned and defenseless, was a discovery that could change everything. The ship's lead scientist, Torin, moved swiftly to his workstation. His eyes, a deep shade of violet, flickered with curiosity. The energy readings are minimal. No life signs. No active defense systems. It seems dead, he said, though there was a hint of uncertainty in his voice. The Dominion had long feared the humans, not just because of their brutal efficiency in war, but because of their unpredictability. They were creatures of adaptation, capable of responding to threats in ways no logical species could anticipate. Even so, the chance to finally uncover their secrets was too great to resist. "Proceed with the scan," Virex ordered, his voice firm. "We must know what's inside that ship." The technicians worked quickly, activating deep scan probes to penetrate the warship's outer hull. A soft hum vibrated through the Xylar vessel as powerful waves of energy spread out, searching, mapping, analyzing. The holographic display flickered as data began pouring in. Schematics, heat signatures, fragmented codes. But something was wrong. The scan was too easy. It was as if the warship was allowing itself to be studied. Torin frowned. "This doesn't make sense. The Terrans are paranoid about security. Their technology should be heavily encrypted, but this data is coming in almost freely." Virex narrowed his eyes. Maybe the ship really is abandoned. A relic left behind after a battle. Before Torin could respond, the lights on the warship flickered. A single pulse of red illumination rippled across its hull, like the heartbeat of a sleeping beast suddenly awakening. The Xylar crew froze. The bridge fell silent except for the steady beeping of the scanner, which had just detected something new, an active signal coming from the warship itself. "Sir," one of the technicians stammered. "The ship, it's responding." A chill spread through the room as the holographic display warped. The data stream shifted, reconfiguring itself into something entirely different. What had once been a collection of numbers and schematics was now a message. A single line of text, written in the common interstellar language, appeared on the screen. "Unauthorized scan detected. Countermeasures engaging." Panic set in. Torin's hands danced over the controls, trying to shut down the scan, but the system refused to comply. "We've lost control. The warship is overriding our commands," he shouted. Virex shot to his feet. "Cut the power to the scanners." The technician slammed his palm onto the emergency shutdown, but nothing happened. The ship's engines flickered, and then, as if in response to their growing terror, the warship moved. It had been drifting before, lifeless and still, but now it turned, slowly, deliberately, toward them. The Xylar vessel's proximity alarms blared as the massive Terran warship activated its thrusters, closing the distance between them at a speed that was impossible for something that was supposedly inactive just moments ago. Then came the worst part. The Xylar's own ship began transmitting data to the human warship. Torin's breath caught in his throat. Their ship wasn't scanning anymore. It was being scanned. Every system, every file, every classified Dominion intelligence record was being pulled, copied, and stored. They weren't the hunters anymore. They were the prey. A new message appeared on the display. "Analysis complete. Xylar technology. Primitive. Threat level. Negligible." It was not a declaration of hostility. It was worse than that. It was dismissal. The Xylar scientists were no longer afraid of what they might learn from the human warship. They were afraid of what it had just learned about them. The Xylar crew stood frozen in place, their minds racing to process the message flashing on their screens. The human warship had not only scanned them, but had dismissed them outright. Primitive, negligible, unworthy of concern. For a species as proud and advanced as the Xylar Dominion, this was an insult unlike any other. But more than that, it was terrifying. Xeltorin's fingers trembled over his console as he tried to regain control. "Sir, it's inside our systems, our firewalls, our encryption. None of it mattered. It tore through everything like it was nothing." His voice was laced with something he was not used to feeling. Fear. Captain Vyrex's mandibles clicked together in frustration. "Shut it down. Purge the system. Wipe the memory core. If they have access to our data, we have already lost." The technicians worked frantically, overriding protocols, forcing shutdown sequences, but nothing responded. The ship's engines flickered again. The Xylar vessel wasn't just losing control of its data, it was losing control of itself. A deep vibration rumbled through the hull, followed by a sudden, sharp jolt. The crew staggered as alarms blared across the ship. The Terran warship had done nothing aggressive, no weapons fired, no attacks initiated, but something was happening, something far worse than a direct strike. "Captain," a technician cried. "The ship, it's moving. Against our commands." Vyrex's eyes widened. "What do you mean it's moving?" "The thrusters have activated on their own. We're being repositioned." The realization struck all at once. The human warship wasn't destroying them. It was rearranging them, like a child moving a piece on a game board. The main screen flickered as the warship's shadow loomed larger. The Xylar vessel was drifting closer, not by its own will, but by the will of the thing that had taken control. They were being maneuvered, their ship forced into alignment with the warship's starboard flank. Then, in an instant, the data stream cut off. Total silence. The Xylar ship's engines powered down completely. Every console on the bridge went dark. Even the artificial gravity momentarily flickered, causing the crew to stumble as their weight shifted. They were no longer in control of anything. Xeltorin gulped. "It let us go." Vyrex stared at the warship, his claws digging into the armrests of his chair. No movement, no weapons activated, no further scans. The human warship had finished. Then, the final message appeared on their screen. "You have learned enough. Leave." It wasn't a request. It was a command. The Xylar crew exchanged horrified glances. The humans had known they were scanning their warship from the beginning. They had allowed it. And when the time came, they had taken what they wanted instead. Captain Vyrex clenched his fists. His pride screamed at him to do something, to fight, to retaliate, to prove that the Xylar Dominion was not some weak, insignificant force in the universe. But deep inside, he knew the truth. The humans had won this battle before it even started, and that realization was far worse than any weapon they could have fired. The bridge of the Xylar ship remained in eerie silence. The final message from the human warship still flickered on the main screen, its meaning undeniable. "You have learned enough. Leave." Captain Vyrex felt his claws tremble against his armrest. His entire life had been dedicated to serving the Xylar Dominion, to proving their supremacy over the lesser races of the galaxy. But now, for the first time, he understood that they were the lesser ones. Xeltorin swallowed hard. "Sir, what do we do?" The question should have been ridiculous. The Xylar Dominion did not take orders from others. They were the ones who commanded. Yet now, the decision was no longer theirs to make. Vyrex's mandibles clicked together. His pride refused to accept this outcome, but his survival instinct screamed at him to obey. The humans had not destroyed them, but they could have. That, in itself, was a warning far greater than any weapon. "Activate the emergency thrusters," Vyrex ordered at last. "Take us out of here, slowly, no sudden movements." Xeltorin hesitated but nodded. His claws tapped at the console, sending the ship into a slow retreat. The moment they moved, the warship reacted. It didn't fire. It didn't pursue. It simply shifted its position slightly, like a predator watching its prey retreat. It was a reminder. We are watching. As the Tyler ship distanced itself, the bridge crew finally exhaled. The oppressive presence of the warship faded into the darkness of space, but none of them would ever forget this encounter. Torin turned to the captain. "Sir, we have to report this to High Command." Virex's eyes narrowed. Yes, High Command needed to know, but what would they do? The Xylar Dominion had long believed that humans were just another species to be studied, perhaps even controlled. This encounter proved that assumption false. "Prepare a full report," Virex said. "Send it through encrypted channels. Only the High Chancellor is to see it." Torin nodded, but something in his expression showed doubt. "And what if High Command doesn't believe us?" Virex didn't answer immediately. He already knew the truth. The Xylar Dominion's arrogance was its greatest weakness. They would see this as a challenge. They would not back down. And if they chose war? Virex turned back to the screen, where the warship had vanished into the void. They would not survive it. The Xylar High Command received the report within hours. The transmission from Captain Virex was marked urgent, encrypted at the highest level. When it reached the High Chancellor's chamber, the council members gathered, eager to hear what their scout ship had uncovered. They expected valuable intelligence, secrets they could use to manipulate or control humanity. What they got was silence. The footage of the human warship, the analysis of its impossible power, the message it had sent. "You have learned enough. Leave," played before them. For a full minute, no one spoke. The High Chancellor, an elder Xylar with ridges of authority on his exoskeleton, leaned forward. His mandibles twitched. This must be an error. A scientist at the table hesitated. "Chancellor, the energy readings alone suggest." Silence. The High Chancellor slammed a clawed fist on the table. "You expect me to believe that humans possess such power? A warship capable of rewriting our understanding of warfare?" The other council members exchanged glances. They, too, had always considered humanity a lesser species. They were strong, yes, but nowhere near the might of the Dominion. The very thought that they had underestimated them was unacceptable. One of the military advisors clicked his mandibles in frustration. What if this is a deception? A trick? Perhaps they manipulated the readings to make us think they are more powerful than they are. The High Chancellor's eyes gleamed. Yes, that would be the logical answer. They must be bluffing. But one council member, a seasoned strategist, shook his head. And what if they aren't? What if Captain Virex is right? If humans possess even a fraction of this power, we must consider the consequences. Provoking them could be. Enough. The High Chancellor cut him off. We do not bow to lesser species. We are the ruling power of this galaxy. The room filled with murmurs of agreement. It was how the Xylar had always operated. If a species resisted, they crushed it. If they feared something, they dominated it. That was the way of their empire. A High Chancellor stood. Send a fleet. A real fleet. If humanity thinks they can intimidate us, they are mistaken. We will take their warship apart. We will learn its secrets. And we will remind them who truly controls this galaxy. A shiver ran through the council. Some nodded eagerly, others hesitated. But no one spoke against it. Orders were given. A fleet of 10 Xylar battleships was assembled, each carrying enough firepower to destroy entire civilizations. Their mission was clear. Find the human warship, subdue it, bring humanity to its knees. As the Xylar fleet departed, deep in the void of space, unseen eyes watched. The humans had been waiting, and they had already decided what came next. The Xylar fleet emerged from hyperspace, their massive warships cutting through the void like daggers of steel. Their sensors immediately picked up the human warship, still hovering in the same location where the scout ship had first encountered it. It did not flee. It did not hide. It simply waited. Aboard the command ship, Supreme Commander Drelix sneered at the sight. They think they can intimidate us with their one warship. He turned to his bridge officers. Surround it. Disable its engines. I want it taken intact. The Xylar ships moved in, forming a tightening ring around the human vessel. Energy weapons powered up. Locking mechanisms activated. Drelix watched the monitors with satisfaction. Prepare to fire. Then, something changed. The human warship's exterior shimmered, as if space itself bent around it. The energy readings on the Xylar screen spiked, higher than before, impossibly high. The warship, once motionless, began to move, but not through conventional thrusters. It simply disappeared from one spot and reappeared several kilometers away in an instant. What is this? Drelix roared. One of his officers scrambled at the controls. Commander, we're detecting something. Their ship is emitting a pulse, a single invisible pulse. And then everything stopped. Xylar systems froze. Screens went dark. Engines shut down. Weapons failed. The entire fleet, once a force of unstoppable power, now drifted in the void, helpless. Drelix slammed his fist against the console. Report. What just happened? His crew scrambled, clicking their mandibles in panic. Sir, it's not a weapon. It's something else. We don't understand it. Then, the human warship finally spoke. Its message did not come through the standard communication channels. It bypassed everything, directly into their minds. We gave you a chance to leave. Drelix felt a cold presence in his thoughts, an intelligence far beyond anything he had encountered before. You refused. The Xylar command crew shivered. For the first time in their empire's history, they felt true fear. And then the human warship acted. Without warning, the human warship moved, not through traditional propulsion, but as if it was dragging reality itself with it. One moment, it was in front of the Xylar fleet. The next, it was inside their formation, passing through their ships without any resistance. It was as if the laws of physics did not apply to it. Panic erupted on the Xylar command deck. It's inside our formation. Our weapons can't lock onto it. Drelix bared his fangs. Fire EV or I thing. The fleet obeyed. Beams of energy, plasma torpedoes, and railgun slugs tore through the void toward the human ship. The attacks never reached their target. The warship shifted, flickering like a mirage, and every shot missed. Some even struck their own ships, causing friendly fire explosions across the fleet. Then the human vessel counterattacked. It did not fire weapons. It did not launch torpedoes. Instead, it released another pulse, silent, invisible, yet more terrifying than any weapon. The Xylar ships shook. Their hulls began to disassemble at the molecular level. Not explode, not melt, simply come apart, as if reality itself had decided to erase them. One by one, the Xylar warships vanished, not in fire, but in utter, silent annihilation. Drelix watched in horror as his mighty fleet, the pride of the Xylar Empire, was unmade in an instant. The human warship sent one final message. You wanted to study us. Now you understand. Never come near us again. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the human ship vanished, leaving only empty space and the drifting remains of the once mighty Xylar Armada. Drelix drifted in the silence of space, his command ship nothing more than a shattered wreck. The fleet was gone, the pride of the Xylar Empire, erased without a single shot fired from the human warship. His suit's emergency systems kept him alive, but what was the point? He had seen something impossible, something that defied all logic. The human ship had not fought in any way he understood. It had moved like a ghost, ignored their attacks, and then simply unmade their ships. Not destroyed. Erased. How could any species fight against an enemy that didn't follow the laws of the universe? A weak distress beacon flickered in the ruins of the Xylar fleet. Survivors, maybe. It didn't matter. The Empire would never challenge humanity again. Drelix knew that much. Then, his suit's communicator crackled to life. A transmission. Xylar Commander, a calm, human voice spoke. You have seen what happens when you provoke us. Take this message back to your Empire. Drelix's blood chilled. Never come near human space again. The signal cut out, and Drelix floated there, staring into the void, knowing that the Xylar Empire had just made the worst mistake in galactic history.